Evan had never thought of himself as a diplomat. He was just a soldier, trained for combat and missions that involved saving lives or protecting colonies. But here he was, standing in front of a gathering of alien leaders, trying to mediate peace on a distant planet called Zephyra. His assignment was to help different alien tribes set aside their differences and share resources. But it wasn't going to be easy. The tribes of Zephyra were not like anything Evan had encountered before. They were powerful, proud, and each one believed their way was the best. He had heard of their constant infighting, and he knew that his mission was a long shot. But Evan wasn't a man to back down easily. His first real challenge came when he met Zara. She was one of the leaders of a tribe known as the Rikar. The Rikar were known for their strength and their fierce loyalty to their people. Zara, though, was different. She was smart and strategic, but there was something about her that made Evan feel nervous. Perhaps it was the way she looked at him, her dark eyes sharp and calculating. She wasn't the type to trust easily. "You're human, aren't you?" Zara said, her voice low and guarded. Evan nodded. "Yes. I'm here to help mediate peace between your tribe and the others." She crossed her arms, eyeing him with suspicion. "Help. Your kind is known for destruction, not peace." Evan understood why she would say that. Humans had a reputation for conflict, but that didn't mean they were incapable of peace. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to listen, to understand." Zara scoffed. "Understand? You have no idea what it's like to live in a world where power is everything, where every tribe is hungry for more and no one is ever satisfied. My people, the Rikar, are insatiable. No matter how much we gain, it's never enough. We are always at war with ourselves, trying to prove we are the strongest." Evan could hear the bitterness in her words. He had heard rumors of her tribes, internal struggles, but hearing it from Zara herself made it seem all the more real. She wasn't just a warrior, she was burdened with the weight of her people's expectations. "Why do you continue fighting then?" Evan asked, his voice gentle. Zara looked away, her eyes narrowing as she spoke. "Because if we don't, we will be destroyed. We have no choice. We fight for survival." Evan couldn't help but feel sympathy for her. He had never been in her position, ever had to carry the weight of an entire tribe's survival on his shoulders. But he also knew that there had to be another way. There had to be a way to help her people find peace, even if it meant fighting a different kind of battle. "I'm not here to take sides," Evan said. "I want to help you find a way to make peace. I believe it's possible." Zara laughed. Bitterly, "You think peace is possible? How can peace exist when every tribe is hungry for more? When there is never enough to go around?" Evan's mind raced. He could see the truth in what she was saying, but he wasn't ready to give up. He had been trained to fight, yes, but he was also trained to think strategically. Maybe there was a way to find common ground. So maybe it wasn't about giving each tribe merit. It was about showing them that they could all have enough if they worked together. "I know it's hard," Evan said, stepping a little closer. "But I believe that if we work together, we can make it work. We can create something better, something where all tribes benefit." Zara studied him for a long moment, her eyes scanning his face as if trying to determine if he was being sincere. Finally, she spoke. "You're a fool, Evan," she said quietly. "But maybe you're a fool who believes in something. That's more than I can say for anyone else." Evan felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. Zara might have called him a fool, but at least she hadn't dismissed him outright. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time since arriving on Zephyra, he felt like he might be able to make a difference. Zara turned to leave, but then paused. "One thing you should know," she said, her voice soft but serious. "The Rikar are not just hungry for power. We are hungry for survival. And sometimes, survival means we must push others aside." Evan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Survival was something every species understood, even if they went about it in different ways. As Zara walked away, Ivan stood there for a moment, lost in thought. The mission ahead wasn't going to be easy, but he had made his first step. He had earned Zara's attention, and maybe, just maybe, he could convince her that there was a way for her tribe to survive without tearing everything apart, and that was a fight he was willing to take on. Evan couldn't stop thinking about Zara's words, the way she spoke about her tribe's hunger, their constant need for power, and the pressure she felt to be the one to lead them to greatness. It all weighed heavily on him. He had come to Zephyrah to help mediate peace, but now he was starting to understand just how complicated that peace would be to achieve. He spent the next few days in the tribal camp, learning about the different tribes and their customs. He met with leaders from the other tribes, trying to find common ground, but most of the discussions went nowhere. They were all too focused on what they could gain from the peace talks rather than how they could make things better for everyone. Zara was always present at the meetings, her arms crossed, her expression guarded. She was a warrior at heart, not a diplomat, and it showed in her interactions with the other tribe leaders. She spoke bluntly, sometimes even harshly, making it clear that she would not be easily swayed. Evan, on the other hand, tried to be patient. He knew that peace wasn't something that could be forced, it had to be earned. But it was hard when Zara was constantly throwing up walls. One evening, as the sun set and the camp grew quiet, Evan found himself walking toward the edge of the settlement. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple, the distant mountains bathed in the soft glow of the fading light. He needed a break from the tense atmosphere, and he found a quiet spot near a small stream that ran through the valley. He wasn't alone for long. Zara appeared, walking toward him with her usual confidence, her boots crunching on the gravel. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes searching the horizon. "You're out here a lot," she said, her voice softer than usual. Evan nodded. "I needed some space. Things are a little tense in the camp right now." Zara didn't respond at first. She just stood there, watching the water flow past them. Finally, she spoke again. "I can see why they sent you. You're patient. You don't give up easily." Evan chuckled. "I don't know about that. I just don't know when to quit." Zara turned to him, her dark eyes studying his face. "Why? Are you really here, Evan? Why are you trying so hard to help us?" It was a question Evan had asked himself many times since arriving on Zephyrah. He had signed up for this mission because he believed in peace and the idea that even the most divided groups could come together. But being here, facing the reality of the situation, made him wonder if that was possible. Still, he had made a promise, and he couldn't break it. "I'm here because I believe it's possible to find common ground," Evan said. "I believe we can make a better future, not just for your tribe, but for all of them. I don't want to see anyone lose everything because they couldn't agree on something." Zara's expression softened slightly, but she remained quiet. She stepped closer to the water, watching it flow over the rocks. "You don't understand," she said after a long pause. "My tribe is at the edge. We're always fighting to survive. Every decision we make, every move we take, is about securing a future for us. The other tribes don't get it. They want more, but they're not willing to fight for it like we are." Evan could hear the pain in her voice. Zara wasn't just defending her tribe's actions, she was defending herself. She had spent her life fighting, not just for survival, but for her people's future. It wasn't something she could easily let go of. "I understand more than you think," Evan said quietly. "I fought for things too. But there's a difference between fighting to survive and fighting to win at any cost. Your tribe doesn't have to be the strongest to survive. You can find a way to work with the others." Zara didn't respond right away. She just kept staring at the water, her face unreadable. Evan wanted to say more, but he didn't want to push her too hard. He had learned that you couldn't rush someone into trust. It had to be built over time. "I've seen your people fight," Yvonne added after a long moment. "You're strong. But strength isn't everything. What you do with it that matters." Zara finally looked at him, her eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of something in her gaze, something that made Evan believe that maybe she was starting to see him not just as a human soldier, but as someone who genuinely cared about her people. "Maybe you're right," she said slowly. "Maybe there's more to strength than just fighting." Evan smiled. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He had been hoping for a breakthrough, and this felt like one. Zara wasn't just seeing him as an outsider anymore. She was starting to open up, to let him in. "I'm here for you, Zara," Evan said. "I want to help you, help your tribe. But we can't do this alone. We have to work together, all of us." Zara didn't reply immediately. She just nodded, her expression thoughtful. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. For the first time since arriving on Zafira, Evan felt like there was hope. As the last light of the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Zara turned to leave. "I'll think about why." You said," she said. "But don't expect me to trust the others easily. Trust is earned, not given." Zara wasn't there yet, but she was closer than she had been. When they first met, and for Evan, that was enough. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. The days following his conversation with Zara were filled with tension. The peace talks were moving slowly, and Evan could feel the pressure building. The tribe leaders were becoming frustrated, and the hope for a successful outcome seemed to be slipping away. Yet, there was one person who still believed in the possibility of peace. Zara. She had been quieter in the meetings, less combative than before. Evan noticed that she spent more time alone, deep in thought. She was still a warrior at heart, but he could see a change in her. She was listening, not just to the other tribes, but also to herself. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Zara approached Evan after a particularly heated meeting. The firelight cast shadows on her face, and her expression was unreadable. "I need your help," she said, her voice low. Evan looked up from where he was sitting, surprised. "What's going on?" Zara sat down beside him, her posture tense. "The other tribe leaders don't understand. They're all too focused on what they can gain. They're not thinking about the long-term consequences of their actions. We don't do something soon, this planet will be torn apart." Evan could see the worry in her eyes. Zara wasn't just worried about her tribe. She was worried about the future of all the tribes on Zafira. "I've been thinking about what you said," she continued. "You're right. Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about finding a way to survive without destroying everything. But I don't know how to make them see that." Evan could feel the weight of her words. It was clear that Zara cared deeply for her people and for the planet, but she was caught in the same struggle. As the others fighting for survival in a world where nothing ever seemed enough, "I think we need to show them," Evan said, his mind racing. "We need to show them that peace isn't just an idea, it's a choice. A better future is possible if we can prove it to them. But we can't just talk about it, we need to take action." Zara nodded slowly, her eyes searching his face. "And how do you propose we do that?" Evan paused, thinking. Then he got an idea. "There's a traditional challenge between the tribes. It's a test of strength and strategy. The winner gets control of the most valuable resources on the planet. It's a way of proving which tribe is strongest. If we enter the challenge, and we show that we can win not by brute force, but by working together, maybe that will change their minds." Zara was silent for a long moment. She was considering the idea, weighing the risks. Finally, she spoke. "You think the others will accept this?" Evan shrugged. "They'll have no choice. They're already looking for a way. To prove their strength, if we show them that we can succeed together, it might be the message they need to hear." Zara looked at him, her gaze steady. "Kata, I'll agree to this, but only if you promise me something." Evan raised an eyebrow. "What's that? You'll follow my lead?" "I know the challenge is better than anyone here, and I won't risk everything." "Just for the sake of a good idea." Evan smiled. "You've got a deal." The challenge was set to take place the following week. The tribes would compete in several trials, each designed to test their physical strength, mental agility, and strategic thinking. Evan had trained his entire life to fight, but this would be different. This time it wouldn't just be about power, it would be about cooperation. In the days leading up to the event, Zara and Evan spent hours together, preparing. Zara taught Evan how to navigate the treacherous terrain of Zafira, how to read the land and use its resources to their advantage. Evan, in turn, shared his military strategies, showing Zara how to think several steps ahead of her opponents. They trained hard, pushing each other to their limits. There were moments of frustration when Zara would snap at him for suggesting a different approach, or when Evan would get impatient with the slow pace of the training. But each time, they would find a way to work through it, learning from each other and growing stronger together. The night before the challenge, they sat by the fire, their muscles sore from the day's training. The air was cold, but there was a sense of calm between them. "Do you really think we can win this?" Zara asked quietly, her voice serious. Evan looked at her, his expression determined. "I believe we can, but only if we trust each other. Only if we work together." Zara met his gaze, and for the first time since they had met, Evan saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She nodded slowly. "We'll do it," she said. "Together." The next day the tribes gathered at the designated challenge site, a vast open field surrounded by jagged mountains. The air was thick with tension as the competitors lined up, each tribe determined to win. The challenge was about to begin, and for the first time in a long while, Evan felt a sense of excitement. He and Zara stood side by side, ready to face whatever came their way. They weren't just fighting for victory, they were fighting for something bigger, a chance for peace. As the first trial began, Evan knew that this was just the beginning. The real challenge wasn't the trials themselves, it was changing the hearts and minds of the tribes. But with Zara by his side, he believed they had a chance. The morning of the challenge was fast approaching, and Evan could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. Every day, the atmosphere in the camp grew more tense. The other tribe leaders had already started to sharpen their weapons and prepare their strategies. But Evan wasn't focused on the weapons. He was focused on Zara. Training with Zara had been harder than anything he'd ever done before. She pushed him beyond his limits, forcing him to adapt and learn new skills. It wasn't just about physical strength, though. There was plenty of that, but also about thinking on his feet, learning to read the terrain, and working in sync with someone else. Trust was essential, and the more he trained with Zara, the more he realized just how much he trusted her. Zara was a natural leader. She knew when to be tough and when to step back. She could spot a weakness from miles away and knew exactly how to turn it into strength. Evan wasn't sure he could ever match her skill, but he had to try. They had one chance, and failure wasn't an option. "You're too slow," Zara said one evening, as they practiced a complicated maneuver through the dense woods. She moved with the grace of someone who had lived their whole life in these forests. Evan, still clumsy in comparison, struggled to keep up. "I'm trying," Evan said. Wiping sweat from his brow, Zara stopped and turned to face him. "I know. But you have to do more than try. You have to move as if your life depends on it. Because it will, soon enough. If we fail, there won't be another chance." Evan nodded, understanding the seriousness of her words. He had known the stakes from the beginning, but hearing them from Zara made it feel real. The future of the tribes, the survival of Zafira, the hope of peace, all rested on their shoulders. "Let's do it again," Zara said, her voice softer now. She was giving him a chance to improve. Evan appreciated that. He wasn't used to someone believing in him like this. It made him more determined than ever. They went through the maneuver again, and each time, Evan felt himself getting a little bit faster, a little bit better. Zara was relentless, but she never let him give up. They were a team now, more than just two people training for a challenge. They were partners, working toward a common goal. The next day, after another long training session, Zara sat down on a large rock, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "You've come a long way," she said, surprising Evan. "You're not the same man who showed up here a few weeks ago." Evan sat beside her, feeling the weight of her words. "I owe it to you. I couldn't have gotten this far without you." Zara looked at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "You're stronger than you think. The thing about peace is, it's not about being the strongest. It's about being the smartest, knowing when to fight, when to step back, and when to trust those around you." Evan turned to her, taking in her words. "You've really changed your mind about all this, haven't you?" Zara sighed, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. "I used to think strength was the only thing that mattered. But you've shown me there's another way, a better way. Evan smiled, feeling a sense of pride. Zara was strong, but she was learning to be more than that. She was learning to believe in something bigger than herself, something that wasn't just about power or survival. "I think we've got this," Evan said, his confidence growing. "We just have to keep working together." Zara nodded. "We'll win. We'll show them that peace is the strongest force of all." The next morning, as the challenge finally began, the tribes gathered in the clearing. The air was thick with anticipation. The competitors stood tall, ready for whatever trials the leaders had planned. Evan and Zara stood side by side, the tension between them only adding to the weight of the moment. Evan looked at the other tribe leaders. All had the same determined expressions, but Evan could see the cracks beneath the surface. They were all desperate to win, to prove their strength. But Evan knew they were missing something they couldn't see. Zara squeezed his shoulder. A silent gesture of support. They didn't need to speak. Kate, they both knew what was at stake. They had prepared for this. Now it was time to show the others that there was more to strength than just force. The first trial was a physical endurance test, where the tribes had to navigate through a dangerous jungle and reach the other side before time ran out. Evan and Zara led the way, using everything they had learned. Zara was quick and sure-footed, her knowledge of the land allowing them to avoid the worst of the traps and obstacles. Evan kept up, relying on his instincts and the lessons Zara had taught him. Halfway through, they caught up with the other tribes, but instead of rushing ahead, Zara signaled for Evan to stop. She led them through a hidden path, one she had learned to navigate in her childhood. It was risky, but it saved them time and energy, and when they finally reached the finish line, they were the first to arrive. The other tribes were still catching up when Zara turned to Evan, her face breaking into a rare smile. "We did it. But this is only the first trial. We've got a long way to go." Evan grinned, feeling more alive than ever. They had done it not just because they were fast or strong, but because they had worked together, using their knowledge and skills to outsmart the others. As they stood there, waiting for the next trial, Evan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had taken the first step. It was a big one. The next day was the most intense part of the challenge. The tribes had already faced several trials, testing their physical strength, speed, and mental agility. But now came the final test, a strategic battle that would determine the winner. This would require more than just strength. It would test their ability to outthink their opponents, to use their surroundings to their advantage, and to work together under pressure. Evan felt the weight of the task ahead. The other tribes had been fierce competitors, but he and Zara had managed to stay ahead, relying on their training and teamwork. They knew the final trial would be the hardest yet, but they were determined to succeed. They were fighting for more than just victory. They were fighting for the future of the tribes, for peace, and for a chance to prove that cooperation could be stronger than conflict. Zara was calm, as always, but Evan could see the determination in her eyes. She had taken on the role of leader, and it was clear she was ready to lead them through this final challenge. He had learned so much from her, how to think on his feet, how to adapt quickly, and, most importantly, how to trust. The trial was set in a dense forest filled with natural obstacles, thick trees, rocky hills, and deep ravines. The tribes would be given a map and a set of objectives. They had to reach the final point, but there would be challenges along the way, including a series of puzzles, physical tasks, and confrontations with other tribes. The first team to reach the final destination with the most points would win. Evan and Zara stood at the starting line with the rest of the competitors, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. The tribe leaders exchanged nervous glances, but Zara's face remained steady. She had seen it all before. This was just another challenge to overcome. As the signal was given, the tribes moved quickly through the forest, navigating the first obstacles. Zara led them with confidence, her knowledge of the terrain giving them an advantage. Evan followed closely, keeping his eyes open for any signs of danger or opportunity. He had learned to be more observant since he'd arrived on Zafira, and now every sound in the forest, every shift in the wind, felt important. They soon reached the first puzzle, a series of stones that had to be arranged in a specific pattern. The other tribes were already at work, But Evan and Zara quickly took control. Zara's quick thinking and Evan's ability to analyze the situation helped them solve the puzzle faster than anyone else. As they moved forward, they could see the other tribes struggling behind them. Zara didn't let up. She kept pushing forward, making sure they stayed ahead. Evan could feel the pressure mounting, but he stayed focused. He had a job to do, and he wasn't about to let anything distract him. They encountered several more obstacles, quick streams to cross, steep hills to climb, and hidden traps to avoid. Each time, they worked together to find the best solution. Zara's strength and experience guided them. Evan's quick thinking and resourcefulness helped them adapt to each new challenge. Halfway through the trial, they ran into another tribe, one that had been a fierce competitor from the start. The tribe's leader, a tall, muscular alien with piercing eyes, saw them coming and immediately tried to block their path. "You're getting ahead of yourself," the leader sneered. "This is our territory. You won't get any further." Evan didn't hesitate. "We're not here to fight," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We just want to finish the challenge." The leader laughed. "You think you can just walk through and win? This is a contest of strength. We'll see who's really the strongest." Zara stepped forward, her eyes locked on the leaders. "Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about being smart, about knowing when to move forward and when to hold back. If you want to win, you'll have to do more than just fight." The leader seemed to pause, unsure of how to respond. For a moment it looked like a fight might break out, but Zara's calmness won out. The other tribe hesitated, realizing that Zara wasn't bluffing. With a final glance, they stepped aside, allowing Evan and Zara to pass. As they moved forward, Evan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had avoided a confrontation without having to fight something that felt impossible when he first arrived on Zafira. Zara had shown him that strength didn't always mean overpowering your opponents. Sometimes the smartest way to win was to avoid the fight altogether. The rest of the trial went smoothly. They reached the final point faster than any other team, earning the most points from the various tasks. As they stood there, panting and covered in dirt, they looked around at the other tribes still struggling to finish. Zara turned to Evan, her eyes meeting his. "We did it," she said softly. Evan smiled, feeling a rush of relief. "We did it together." The other tribes slowly made their way to the finish line, but there was no mistaking it. Zara and Evan had won. Not just because they were the fastest, but because they had worked together, using their skills and knowledge to outthink the competition. As the leaders of the tribes gathered to announce the results, Zara stood tall beside Evan. She had proven something to herself and to the others. Strength was important, but trust, strategy, and cooperation were even more powerful. They had shown that peace could be achieved not through force, but through understanding and teamwork. The future of Zafira had just changed, and it was only the beginning. The days following the challenge were tense, but filled with a sense of accomplishment. Evan and Zara had proven to the other tribes that cooperation and strategy could win over sheer strength. The rest of the tribes had begun to recognize this, but the real test was yet to come. The final trial was not just a competition, it was a chance to change everything. Zara had always known that the true victory wasn't in winning the challenge, it was in what happened afterward. The competition had brought the tribes together, but it was the peace talks that would decide Zafira's future. And that was where Zara had to face her biggest challenge, the tribe leaders who had always believed in dominance, in the idea that the strongest tribe should lead them all. The following morning, as the sun began to rise over the jagged mountains, leaders gathered once more in the council hall. The room was silent, heavy with anticipation. Yvonne could sense the tension in the air. They had done everything they could to prove the strength of cooperation, but now they would see if the leaders were ready to follow through. Zara stood at the front of the room, her posture strong and confident. She was no longer the warrior who had been skeptical of peace. She was a leader, ready to guide her people and the others toward a future where they didn't have to fight for survival. "We've won the challenge," Zara began, her voice calm and steady. "But the true victory will be found in how we move forward from here. If we continue to fight, we will only tear this planet apart. We've shown that cooperation can be stronger than conflict. Now we need to put that belief into action." The other tribe leaders exchanged uncertain looks. They weren't used to hearing a leader speak so boldly about peace. Most of them had always thought of victory as a physical conquest, not a diplomatic one. One of the leaders, a grizzled older alien with a deep voice, spoke up. "You speak of peace, Zara, but what will happen to those of us who don't want it? What will happen to those who want to remain in power?" Zara didn't flinch. "We all want power," she said, "but the power that comes from war is fleeting. The power that comes from peace lasts. We can all be strong, not by dominating others, but by building something together." Evan could see that some of the leaders were beginning to consider her words, but others still seemed skeptical. He knew it wasn't going to be easy to change their minds. It wasn't just about winning, the challenge it was about changing. Centuries of tradition, about convincing people who had always fought for dominance that there was a better way. The room fell into a heavy silence. Zara took a deep breath, then turned to Evan, who had been standing quietly by her side. She nodded. To him, signaling that it was time for him to speak, Evan stepped forward, his heart racing. This was his moment to prove that humans coup. LD helped that they weren't just here to fight, but to build. "Zara's right," he said, his voice steady. "We've proven that we can win by working together. But now we need to show that peace is worth fighting for, that cooperation is stronger than war." There was a murmur of disagreement from some of the leaders. One of them, a younger alien woman with fiery red skin, scoffed. "You think you can just convince us to stop fighting? You think we'll just give up our strength and power because you say so?" Evan didn't back down. "I'm not asking you to give up your strength. I'm asking you to use it for something better. You don't have to be enemies. You don't have to fight each other. If you come together, you can build something more powerful than any tribe can be on its own. Think of your children, your future. Do you want them to live in a world of endless conflict?" The room grew quiet. It was clear that Evan's words had hit a nerve. The idea of a better future was something everyone could understand, even if they didn't want to admit it. Zara stepped forward again, her voice calm but firm. "I know it's hard. I know you all have your fears, but we've shown that cooperation works. The challenge wasn't just about physical strength, it was about trust. If we can trust each other, if we can rely on each other, we can build a future where we all survive together." One by one, the leaders began to speak, their voices hesitant at first, but growing more certain as they listened to Zara and Evan. They didn't all agree immediately, but they were listening, and that was the first step. After a long, intense discussion, the council finally reached an agreement. They would begin to work together, not as separate tribes, but as a unified council, with shared goals and resources. It would be a long road and there would be challenges ahead. But they had made the decision to start building a future of peace. Zara stood at the front of the room, looking around at the leaders who had once been her opponents. She had done it. She had convinced them. It wasn't just her victory, it was their victory too. The tribes of Zafira had taken the first step toward a future without war, and they had done it together. Evan smiled at her. They had done it. It's not by fighting, but by believing in each other, by proving that peace could be stronger than anything else. They had shown the tribes that it was possible to work together, to trust each other, and to build something better. And as Zara looked out at the leaders, she knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long, but with the right people by her side. She believed that they could create a future where strength wasn't just measured by power, but by the ability to work together. For the good of all, the days that followed, the council's decision were filled with hope. The leaders of the tribes had agreed to work together, not just as rivals, but as allies. It was a breakthrough, and for the first time in a long while, there was a real chance for peace on Zafira. The people of the tribes had seen what could happen when they worked together. And now it was time to build on that. Zara stood in the middle of the camp, looking out at the horizon. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the land. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The weight that had always been on her shoulders, her tribe's survival, her constant fight for power, was beginning to lift. She didn't have to fight for her tribe's future anymore. They had a chance to create something better. Evan joined her, standing beside her in silence for a moment, watching the same sunset. He had been there for every step of this journey. Together, They had shown the tribes that peace wasn't impossible, that strength wasn't just about dominating others, but about working together to build a future. I never thought it would happen like this, Zara said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but there was a quiet strength in it. I didn't think the tribes would ever agree to something like this. It feels strange, but good. Evan nodded, a smile playing on his lips. It feels like a new beginning. Just for you, but for all of us. Zara turned to look at him, her eyes filled with something Evan couldn't quite place. I couldn't have done it without you, without your help. I would have kept thinking that the only way to survive was through power and strength. But now I know there's another way. Evan met her gaze, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had always believed that peace was possible, even in the most difficult situations. But seeing Zara's transformation, seeing her believe in peace too, made it feel like something real, something achievable. You taught me a lot too, Evan said. I never knew how much we could accomplish when we stopped fighting and started listening. You've changed more than just your tribe, you've changed me too. Zara smiled, a rare and genuine smile. For the first time, she looked like someone who had found peace within herself. We've changed everything, haven't we? Evan nodded. We have, but it's just the beginning. The real work starts now. The next few days were busy as the tribes began to set up the new council. They had agreed to share resources, to build trade routes, and to work together to protect Scifi. But it wasn't just about practical matters. It was about rebuilding trust. Something that had been broken for so long. Zara took her place as one of the leaders of the new council, working alongside the other tribe leaders. To make sure the agreements were followed through, it wasn't easy. Old habits died hard, and there were many challenges ahead. But Zara was determined. She had learned that peace wasn't something you could take for granted. It had to be worked for. Every day, Evan remained by her side, helping wherever he could. Skills and strategy and diplomacy were valuable, but it was his belief in peace that made the difference. Together they worked to solve problems, settle disputes, and create a future where the tribes didn't have to fight. For survival, one evening, as they sat around a campfire with a few of the other leaders, the conversation turned to the future. The stars were bright above, and the fire crackled as they spoke. You know, as one of the leaders said, a middle-aged alien with silver scales. I never thought I'd see the day when we'd all sit down together like this. We've always been at each other's throats, always fighting for dominance. But now, now, it feels like we might actually have a chance. Zara looked around at the faces of the leaders. They were no longer the fierce rivals they had once been. They were partners, each one realizing that their survival depended on their ability to work together. It wasn't just about strength anymore. It was about unity. We've all come a long way, Zara said, but there's still a long road ahead. We need to keep working together. We need to make sure that what we've built here lasts. Smiled, proud of how far they had come. Zara wasn't just a warrior anymore. She was a leader, someone who had shown the tribes a better way. Together they had proved that peace could be stronger than power, that unity could bring more than victory, yet could bring a future. As the firelight flickered, Evan turned to Zara. I never thought this would be possible, he said quietly. But here we are. Zara looked at him, her expression soft. Anything's possible if you believe in it enough. Evan nodded. He had always believed in peace, in the idea that even the most divided groups could come together. But now, as he looked at Zara and the other leaders, he saw a future where that belief was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. The peace they had fought for wasn't just for the moment, it was for the future. For their children and for the generations to come. And as they sat there, surrounded by the quiet of the night, Evan realized that they had truly changed the future of Scifi. The tribes weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving together.
Oh.
And that was something worth fighting for.